Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I am finally doing my April wrap up. I read a little bit over 20 books last month. Nothing too crazy. I did have a new top favorite, but I did also have quite a few flops as well. But before I get into all the books that I read in April and share my thoughts, here's a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Avery Maxwell. I'm partnering with her today to share her newest release, Your Last First Kiss. Your Last First Kiss is out now, so if you're a fan of small town romances, then be sure to add it to your TBR. The heroine Penny is divorced from her alcoholic ex-husband, and now she's a single mom of 3 boys. She has no time for men because of how busy she is taking care of her 3 rowdy sons, but she does dream about one man that she sees every Wednesday at her office. Dylan brings her her favorite coffee every single week on his way to meet with her boss, but because of her life, they've never been able to pursue anything more. That is until one day Dylan shows up at her doorstep asking for more. If you like small towns, single moms, a hero who wants to go all in with the heroine, friends to lovers, second chance romance, then Your Last First Kiss is for you. You can find it on Amazon right now and read it for free on Kindle Unlimited. I'll leave a link down below for you all to check it out. A big thank you to Avery Maxwell for sponsoring today's video. Alright, back to my April wrap up. So the first book that I read in April was actually a novella. It was the sequel to a novella that I read late last year. This is Forgiveness by Skylar Mason, which is the sequel to Faithless. And yes, this is a groveling romance duet, and yes, it does have cheating. Unfortunately, I didn't love this duet. I really wanted to, but the execution was not there. I gave both books 3 stars. It's supposed to be a groveling romance duet, but the books are just so short, like 50 pages long each, and that's just not enough pages to deal with a whole marriage that is a complete mess. The hero has been cheating on his wife for over a decade because of how she cheated on him early on in their marriage. I didn't really believe in their second chance romance that much, and I didn't get enough groveling than I was expecting. I also have no idea why the author decided to skip ahead a year at the beginning of the second novella. So we missed a whole year of this hero groveling, and I think we really needed it because it was missing a lot. That being said, there still was a lot of angst, there was a lot of remorse on the hero side, but I still wanted a little bit more from it. I don't think 50 pages per novella was enough for this series. And then I read a highly anticipated book by one of my favorite authors. This is So Close by Sylvia Day. I really had no idea what to expect with this new Sylvia Day book because it's been about 5 years since her last release, and we've been waiting on this specific series since around 2016, which is when the Crossfire series ended, and she teased the Blacklist duet at the end of it. And I was obsessed with that teaser chapter because it sounded so angsty. It's a second chance romance with an obsessed hero, which is my kryptonite, and we kind of got that here, but not really. So I read this as a buddy read with my friend Charles from Books on Stereo, and I am so glad that I did because there's a lot going on in this first book. This one I gave 3 stars to. First off, this new duet is not a romance, it is a thriller. The blurb calls it a domestic thriller. You get 4 point of views here. Lily, the main heroine, she was married to Cain, who is the hero, but everyone thought that she died because of how Cain has been living in grief. All of her chapters, all of her point of views are in second person, which is not my favorite thing. Her chapters are pretty much speaking directly to Cain, so the you that she's talking about is Cain. The other 3 point of views are Cain's mother, who puts her family and her company above all else, Cain's sister-in-law, who he slept with before she got married to his brother, and then Cain's butler is the last point of view. He's the one who knows all and sees all and is Cain's right-hand man. All 3 women do have their own plots, but they do also center around Cain. He's this rich, powerful CEO billionaire. He's the one who has taken the throne from Gideon Cross, but honestly I didn't really see why they were all so obsessed with him. He didn't quite compare to Gideon, who I still love, and we never get his point of view, which I feel like could have helped a lot. So the whole mystery in this first book is how and why Lily first left Cain and why she's alive and back now. And at the end of it, we still don't really know all the answers. And anytime Lily and Cain are together, they don't really do anything but have sex, which does get tiring after a while. I wanted more progression of their romance. But yeah, I really wanted to love this one more just because I love Sylvia Day. I love the Crossfire series so much back in the day, but this one, it is very different. So just go into it knowing that it's not going to be a lot of romance and you're going to have a lot of questions left hanging. I then read a paranormal fantasy romance. This is Wings Once Cursed and Bound by Piper J. Drake. I was pretty disappointed with this one. I gave it 2 stars. It was not that enjoyable. I was intrigued in the beginning though, just because the concept sounded so interesting and different and unique. It's an Asian paranormal romance with a heroine who is a Thai bird princess known as the Kinnari. Unfortunately, instead of getting to learn all about this unique folklore and mythology, the book itself is about these magical shoes, and I'm not gonna lie, reading about these deadly shoes in a paranormal romance is underwhelming. So the heroine, Puripun, she is taken in by these shoes, and whenever someone wears them, they literally can't take them off until they die. The hero is a vampire. He is a bit of a treasure hunter. He hunts magical items to keep them away from humans. So when they meet, Bennett brings Puripun into this whole paranormal world. There's all these different supernatural beings, which was nice to read, but I never really grew invested in the world, and the writing was not my favorite. Things weren't fleshed out enough. Everything felt like it was all very surface level. The romance was also just really boring, so this did not work for me. And then I read a contemporary romance. This is a friends to lovers romance. It's The Sun and Her Star by Dylan Allen, which I gave 3 stars to. It is friends to lovers years in the making. Apollo and Graham, they meet as kids when he saves her life from drowning, and then she saves his life in return. Maybe not quite so literally, but she is the only light that he has in his life. They're best friends, but he's struggling because he's living with his abusive stepfather, and when they're in high school, he and his mother finally manage to escape. Unfortunately, Graham and Apollo do lose contact after he leaves, and even more unfortunately, there's a lot of other woman drama. Basically, Graham becomes a sex worker for a pimp for the money to help his sick mother, and because of his sex work, he feels completely unworthy of Apollo, and he pushes her away constantly when they reunite for their second chance romance. She has no idea about his reasoning for pushing her away or what he does for a living. It was a very frustrating romance because it's a kind of romance where if they just talk to each other, then things would be perfectly fine. The hero just needed to open his mouth and then things would be solved instantly, but he didn't, so things are a mess. I did feel for his situation, but he did not handle anything well, and he really looked down on what he did. Apollo was just so much stronger than him, so much more likable, so she did save this book for me, but not really enough for me to quite love it. My next read was also not the best read for me. I read Master of Sin by Sienna Snow, and this one I sadly gave 2 stars to. It was my first time reading Sienna Snow. This is book 1 in the Gods of Vegas series. I probably should have looked into this book more before I read it because the blurb is so vague and I hate vague blurbs. But this book is a slightly dark BDSM romance, and it's not a very good one and not a very hot one either. I could not get into the writing or the characters here. I felt zero chemistry between the main characters here. Apparently, Persephone has been in love with the hero Hagen for years, but I never felt it. We're just told that's how she feels, and then Hagen is supposedly the master of sin. He rules over Vegas, but again, we're told that. We're never shown any of it. I don't even remember much of the plot because there wasn't much of one. It's weird because there's a lot of drama, but at the same time, nothing really happens. It was just a very underwhelming book and not a great first book for me. And then I read a finale to a series that I have been loving so far this year. This is Heart of My Monster by Rena Kent. This is the 3rd and final book in the Monster series. This is the one series from Rena Kent that I have thoroughly enjoyed, so I gave this one 4 stars. I gave each book in the series 4 stars, so it was a very solid series for me. It was so entertaining, mainly because of the hero. Like, he's an idiot, but a lovable one. He is hilarious. I love his sarcasm. He can be very sassy. In this final book, Kuro does go through some deserved suffering because of the heroine. I won't say too much about it just because you know, it's the final book. There's a lot of spoilers, but there is a lot of angst. There's a lot of my wife vibes, possessive vibes, a lot of action like the rest of the series. So it was a great mafia romance series. The heroine is a female bodyguard. She becomes a bodyguard to the hero. Kirill is very much a touch her and you die hero. They were very hot together and very fun. My next read was From Salt to Sky by Adrian Lee. This book calls itself a gothic romance with Wuthering Heights vibes, and it did not deliver. The heroine travels all the way to Scotland, the Isle of Skye, to solve this mystery that's been in her family for generations. It's also for research for her school, but it is a pretty dark family mystery with missing girls and a lot of death, but it ended up being a very confusing read because nothing made sense or was explained well. Babes, really? Boo. What are you doing? There was barely any romance and the pacing was all over the place, which is not a good thing when the book is only 250 pages. It needed more depth, more details, more development, but at least the cover is pretty. But overall, it was a 2-star read. I then read yet another Catharina Maura book. I have been reading so many of her books this year. My latest read was Forever After All, which is one of her standalones, and this one I gave 4 stars to. I actually read this one because I have been trying to cut down on buying all the pretty special editions, and this one was going to be in an upcoming box that I was subscribed to, so I was like, you know what, I need to read this before I actually buy it, and if it's a 5-star read then I will for sure buy it. But I was able to save some money because I gave this one 4 stars. This is one of her standalones and it's got the marriage of convenience trope. The heroine does come from money, but since her mother entered a coma and she still hasn't woken up, her father left them to start his own new family. Elena is struggling for money because of paying all the hospital bills. She is completely broke now and her last resort is to sell herself to this gentleman's club. She does end up being saved though at the last minute by her childhood best friend's older brother, Alexander. Alec is your classic alpha billionaire who tries to be all cold to the heroine but is surprised when he gets all jealous and possessive over her. He tries to say that their marriage of convenience is going to be in name only. He swears that there will never be any love between them, but he plays himself.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
The last part of this book is where all the drama comes in. It does get very over the top. So it is silly, but also very entertaining. I like this couple though. I liked Alec and Elena together. I wouldn't say the romance is anything unique to, you know, the marriage of convenience trope, but it's solid and enjoyable and exactly what I was craving. My next 2 reads were both by Adelaide Forrest. I continued with her Belandi Crime Syndicate series, so I read books 2 and 3. Book 1 was only okay for me, so I was hoping these next 2 books would be better, and they were by a little bit. Book 2 is Forgivable Sins, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. I like this couple more than the one from book 1, mostly because the hero wasn't as dumb, but the heroine does make some frustrating decisions that hurt not just herself, but other people, which is always annoying to read. But anyway, this is a friends to lovers mafia romance. Lino and Samara have been best friends since childhood, and he was actually in love with her since he was 10, but him loving her does put her in danger because of his mafia background, so he lets her go, and unfortunately she ends up marrying a very abusive man. In present day, Samara does finally get a divorce from her husband, and this is when Lino has finally had enough and goes after his woman. She does say no though, and that's kind of a common theme with Adelaide Forrest couples. She says no and he says, I don't care. So dark romances all around from this author, just FYI. Lino forces Samara to live with him, to marry him so that he can protect her. Everything does play out pretty predictably, but I did really love the friends to lovers aspect here. I feel like it's not that common in mafia romances. And then book 3 is Grieved Loss, and this one is the best one for me so far. I give it 4 stars. It is straight up a stalker romance, a dark stalker romance, because Riker has watched Kala for years since he first laid eyes on her, and he's watched her become a mother, become a wife, and now that her husband has died, he finally sees his chance to claim her. Riker pretty much shoves his way into her life and won't take no for an answer. Again, a very Adelaide Forrest hero type of thing. He moves her and her kids to his house, this big warehouse. He becomes a father figure to all of her kids, and it's basically like she never had a husband before, and it is pretty messed up, but it is still pretty fun to read. You know, going into this author's books, you're gonna get a hero who is insanely possessive, obsessive, jealous, and alpha, and sometimes that's exactly what I'm in the mood to read, so this did work well for me. My next read was Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. I have been so excited for something new from Laura Thalassa since the Four Horsemen series ended, and Bewitched is the first book in her brand new paranormal romance series about witches. It's new adult set at college for witches and magic, but the heroine Celine is struggling to get into a coven. She has to do two things to get accepted into this one coven, which is to find herself a familiar and go on this grand quest. So she finds herself flying all the way to the Galapagos Islands, and she actually does do both of these things. She bonds with a panther as her familiar, which I think is just the coolest animal to have as a familiar. And then for her quest, she starts hearing in her mind this man calling her Empress, so she follows that voice. It's all Indiana Jones-like, and she accidentally awakens this warlock, this ancient warrior king named Memnon, who is our hero. He was cursed to sleep forever by his wife, and now that he's woken up, he thinks that Celine is that wife. So he's not happy to see her. He still loves her, but he does want revenge against her. So the romance is a little bit dark just because Memnon is a little bit evil. I really like the world here too. The interesting thing about the magic in this world is that every time a witch or warlock uses it, there is a consequence. So when Celine uses her magic, she loses a bit of her memory every single time, and then when Memnon uses his magic, he gets a little bit more evil. He loses his morality, and the romance is a bit of a slow burn. I mean, there is some steam, but the romance itself, the love between them, it does move slowly. We don't get to see Memnon too much in this book, sadly, but anytime they are together, sparks just fly. So I love this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. Memnon is such a fascinating character, but Celine did steal the show for me. She is hilarious and sassy and just trying to make the most of her magic and her college career. Unfortunately, she just has this evil warlock who is obsessed with her and thinks that she is his wife. But it was great. It was a fantastic start to a new series, and I am dying for more. And then I'm finally getting to my new favorite of 2023, which is the Mindfuck series by St. Abby. I did a reading vlog for the series if you want to check it out, going through all 5 books in the series. Oh my god, it was a wild ride. It was my first time ever reading this series, and it was just as good, just as mind-blowing as everyone said it would be. So this whole series for me, easily 5 stars. I loved it so much. It's one of my favorites of the year, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I finished it. So for anyone who hasn't read it, it is a dark romance between a serial killer heroine and an FBI agent hero who is trying to hunt her down, all while not knowing that the woman that he's falling for is that serial killer. It's intense and dark, very graphic and violent and twisted. I literally could not stop reading it as soon as I got hooked, though I will say it took me reading book 2 for me to fully get invested. It's an unforgettable, mind-blowing read, and it absolutely lives up to all the hype. My next read is a historical romance, and I have missed reading historical romances. This is Pippa and the Prince of Secrets by Grace Calloway. It's book 2 in the Lady Charlotte Society of Angels series, and I had so much fun with it. Pippa is the second lady in this female investigator society to get her romance, and I give it 4 stars. Her hero is actually someone she knew from her childhood. He was an orphan boy that her family took in and cared for when he showed up sick and injured, and ever since then he has never forgotten her. Now Cull is all grown up and he's taken on the role of Prince of Larks, so he's basically the leader of this underground gang and he has a lot of power. When they reunite, sparks fly like crazy. Pippa is a widow, but she never felt any chemistry with her late husband that she now feels with Cull. Cull has basically awakened everything in her and she wants more. Unfortunately, with him being in the underworld and her being a lady of society, being together is impossible. But these two are so perfect together. I love their chemistry. I loved how hot things get between them. I love their childhood history, and I loved that the hero here was the one who was pining after the heroine for so long. Like, he was actually keeping an eye on her throughout the years, and that was just so sweet to me. So this one was another great historical romance from Grace Calloway. I then read a new mafia romance from Tijan. This is A Dirty Business. It's an opposites attract romance, and you can't get more opposites than having a hero who is in the New York Mafia and a heroine who is a parole officer. They meet in the stairway of some hockey game and they are instantly attracted to each other. They want each other badly, but then they find out who exactly the other person is, and then it's like, oh. So it's a slightly forbidden romance. The heroine, she probably shouldn't be getting involved romantically with the guy in the mafia, but she does anyway. So that's the main conflict for the romance here between Jess and Trace, and there is some mafia action here as well, even though neither of them want anything to do with a mafia world. Like, Trace is a very interesting mafia hero just because he doesn't actually love being in the mafia, but he does it for his family and his loved ones. So I give this 3 stars. I liked it okay. The romance, it was good, but it did get overshadowed by everything outside of it. There's just a lot going on for the mafia, so I couldn't really connect with the romance that well. And then I read Gouda Friends by Kathy Yardley. This is book 2 in the Ponto Beach Reunion series, and I had a lot of fun reading book 1, so I was really looking forward to this second book. It's a friends and lovers romance between high school best friends who have lost touch over the recent years. The heroine Tam, she has just dumped her cheating boyfriend. She has a job that she realizes that she really hates, and so she flies all the way back home to her best friend Josh for help. The book is pretty lighthearted. It is fun and fluffy, though there are some moments of what do I want to do for the rest of my life. Josh is such a sweet and nice hero. He absolutely adores his best friend, and even though they haven't talked recently, as soon as she calls, he is instantly ready to help her get back on her feet. They don't have too much conflict, I will say. There's not that much angst. We do have a good amount of longing here. The hero has wanted the heroine for a while, but since it's a friends to lovers romance, they're like, should we risk our friendship for something more? So this is a nice read, really easy to get into. The characters are likable, but I didn't like this one quite as much as book 1, so I'm giving it 3.5 stars. My next read is Beauty and the Baller by Elsa Madden Mills. This is the first standalone in the Strangers in Love series. The main characters here, they had a one-night stand a couple years ago. The hero, who was this big NFL quarterback, he had lost his fiance and his unborn baby in a car accident, and this party was the first time that he was able to get out of his grief. So for one night he was able to forget everything that he lost with the heroine Nova, but unfortunately they never see each other again until 2 years later when they reunite as neighbors in Nova's small hometown in Texas. Ronan is not a football player anymore. He is the temporary coach at this high school, and Nova, the reason why she's back home is because she's broke. The sad but hilarious thing is that Ronan has no idea who Nova is. He does not recognize her when they reunite, so that was very insulting for Nova, but they're forced to see each other a lot as neighbors. And then Ronan comes up with this whole fake dating scheme, mostly to get the woman of their small town off his back because he is a very eligible bachelor, but they do both benefit from this fake dating thing. It was all very enjoyable. I really like this one. The romance, it's slow but sweet. I mean, you feel bad for these two because of what they've been through, but their whole fake dating thing is very fun and flirty. So this one, it's another easy read, nothing too dramatic or angsty. I give it 4 stars. If you like small town, fake dating, sports, then this is for you. I also read Offside by Avery Keelan for my book club, and oh boy, I really wanted to like this one more. It's a hockey romance that originated on Wattpad, and I guess it kind of blew up recently through BookTok, something like that. And like 95% of the time with BookTok, this did not live up to the hype. I gave it 3 stars. It's a new adult sports romance set in college, and oh my god, this book was so unnecessarily long. It was like 700 pages long, which means it was 300-400 pages too much. It honestly could have ended halfway through because the main characters are together by then anyway. It also had a very cliched feel to it. Like, of course the hero is a jerk and a huge man whore, but I did appreciate that he reformed himself pretty quickly as soon as he met the heroine and fell for her. The actual plot is that the heroine, Bailey, she gets dumped by her boyfriend on her 21st birthday. Her now ex is the captain of her school's hockey team, and she ends up rebounding with his biggest rival, his biggest competitor. Chase is a hockey player for another rival college. He has a bad reputation. He is a huge player on and off the ice, but surprisingly he was pretty good to Bailey. He wasn't awful to her like I thought he was gonna be. So the romance I didn't hate, but I didn't fully connect with it either. These two are literally happy and in love halfway through the book, so I didn't need another 300 pages of them. And it was everything outside of the romance that really had me annoyed, like the awful ex, the heroine's brother being a dick, all the dumb roommate girl drama. It felt very unnecessary and overdone. So sadly, I just didn't like this one that much. And then I read Partners in Crime by Alicia Rai. I had so much fun reading this new release. I give it 4 stars. The plot is a bit bonkers, but I loved it. It's a second chance romance. Mira and Naveen, they were in love, in a relationship, but then she ended up leaving him without a word. Now they reunite when Mira goes to see her aunt's lawyer after her aunt passes away for her inheritance. They are very surprised to see each other. She had no idea that he worked for her aunt, and he has no idea why she's going by a different name. And then things go haywire and crazy because they end up kidnapped. They get taken away, beaten, and drugged, all because of Mira's father and her family history with thieving. So these two now have to work together in order to escape, and it's actually so funny. It's like a kidnapping rom-com. It's like everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it's hilarious. These two are so good together. I laughed out loud at different parts while I was reading this one, so it was great. I loved all the shenanigans that these two get themselves into, and it's all just to survive, right? That's the thing. They're trying to stay alive, and it is so fun to read. And then the final book that I read in April was His Curvy Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. This is the latest book in the 5-pack series, book 4, and I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite. I'm torn between 3.5 to 4 stars. It wasn't as good as book 1, which is still my favorite, and I'm still holding out hope for more of that angsty feeling that I got from book 1. So in this book, we are in a different shifter pack, and this one is falling apart because of its poor leadership. Flora, the heroine, is at the bottom of the pack, which is not a great thing to be. She is there because she's a curvy and thick shifter, which apparently is not supposed to be a thing. So because she has some weight, her pack thinks there's something wrong with her. Her mate is Alec, the boy that she has wanted for years, but the one who never even bothers to look her way except when he wants to get a blowjob. So it starts off not so great with the hero pretty much using the heroine, but she's okay with it because she also uses him sort of in a way, even though she doesn't get any pleasure. She justifies it so she doesn't feel bad about what she does, so I'm like, okay. And then the reveal with them being mates happens. Alec realizes that Flora is his mate, and what does he do? He rejects her in front of everyone, like all the other heroes in the series, and she decides to leave the pack. She runs away to the pack that the couple from book 2 went to go build. Alec does chase after her pretty much immediately as soon as she decides to run away, and this is his grovel. I mean, quote unquote grovel. I just hesitate to say that he really groveled satisfyingly because he was just so dumb and oblivious to how Flora was feeling. He tried, he did feel bad about what Flora went through, what he did to Flora, but I feel like he could have groveled more than he did instead of just following her around and making sure she was safe. I just wanted a little bit more angst, a little bit more action in terms of groveling, but I still liked it okay. I really enjoyed being back in this world. I am always gonna read a groveling romance, right? But this one, it's a little hard to live up to how good book 1 was. And that is it for all the books that I read back in April. Let me know your thoughts if you have read any of these same books, and as always, links to everything will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye! Boo! What do you want?